While the Bible briefly mentions the Nephilim in just a few verses, an entire ancient book was discovered that tells their full story from their own perspective. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1947, among them were fragments of the mysterious Book of Giants, a text that predates the biblical flood and reveals the Nephilim's dreams, conversations, and ultimate fate. Was this merely ancient mythology, or could it fill critical gaps in our understanding of what really happened before Noah built his ark? But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? The Forbidden Book, Buried in Time. Throughout history, certain texts have been hidden away, their contents deemed too dangerous or strange for common knowledge. Among these forgotten works lies the Book of Giants, a fragmented tale from before the Great Flood that swept away the ancient world. This mysterious text tells of beings called Nephilim, the offspring of angels and humans who once walked the earth as titans. Their story intertwines with that of Enoch, a righteous man who spoke with God and never tasted death. Unlike the familiar tales from Genesis, this account offers a glimpse into a world where heaven and earth weren't so distant, where divine beings mingled with humanity, and where monsters roamed free. The Book of Giants wasn't included in the Bible we know today. Its passages were scattered across time, buried in caves, and almost lost forever. Yet fragments survived in the Dead Sea Scrolls, unearthed in the mid-20th century, and in ancient Manichaean texts found along the Silk Road. Why was this book kept hidden? Perhaps because it tells of angels who broke divine law, of knowledge meant only for heaven that spilled onto earth, Herbalah, and of giants whose spirits never truly died. These themes echo through many cultures' oldest stories, tales of titans, of floods sent to cleanse the world, and of wisdom from beyond our realm. The narrative fits between the cracks of Genesis, expanding on brief mentions of heroes of old, men of renown who lived when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men. In just a few verses, the Bible hints at an extraordinary saga, then moves on. The Book of Giants fills this gap, revealing the fate of these beings in the days before rain first fell. At its heart, this forgotten text is about boundaries crossed and the price of forbidden knowledge. It speaks of a time when the walls between worlds were thinner, when divine laws were broken, and when paradise was lost. The giants themselves, caught between heaven and earth, divine yet flawed, represent the chaos that follows when natural orders are upended. Their tale begins with angels gazing down from heaven, captivated by the beauty of human women. Soon these watchers would descend to earth, taking wives and teaching skills reserved for the divine. From these unions came the Nephilim, giants in both size and appetite, beings whose very existence troubled the fabric of creation. The Book of Giants offers a rare perspective on these events, sometimes even from the viewpoint of the giants themselves. We hear of their dreams, their fears as judgment approaches, and their desperate attempts to avoid destruction. Unlike most ancient texts, it gives voice to the condemned, allowing us to witness their dawning awareness of fate closing in around them. This forgotten chapter of prehistory challenges our understanding of the ancient world. It suggests that the clean lines between good and evil, human and divine, weren't always so clear. Perhaps this ambiguity explains why the text was set aside, left to fade from memory while clearer moral narratives prevailed. As we piece together these ancient fragments, we touch something both unsettling and profound, a shadow history of our world, where angels fell, giants walked, and the cosmos itself needed cleansing. The Book of Giants stands as a testament to humanity's eternal fascination with what lies beyond the veil and the consequences of peering too deeply into divine mysteries. The world before the flood. Picture a world unlike our own, where lifespans stretched across centuries, where the air hung thick with vitality, and where the barriers between heaven and earth hadn't fully hardened. This was the world before the Great Flood, a realm barely glimpsed in Genesis, but vividly painted in ancient texts like the Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch. The land flourished with abundance unknown to later ages. Plants grew to immense sizes, and animals thrived in perfect harmony with their surroundings. The first humans lived close to the earth, yet retained memories of Eden. They built no cities at first. instead dwelling in the valleys and plains of a world untouched by natural disaster. Adam and his early descendants walked with knowledge from paradise still fresh in their minds. They named the stars, understood the language of birds, and read the patterns in flowing water. This was a time when human consciousness still echoed with divine whispers, when dreams might contain messages from beyond, and when the veil between worlds remained thin. According to ancient texts, the sky itself looked different then. The waters above the firmament, that mysterious celestial ocean mentioned in Genesis, created a canopy effect, filtering sunlight and maintaining perfect temperatures. Some scholars believe this antediluvian atmosphere might explain the incredible longevity attributed to early humans in biblical accounts. Yet for all its natural beauty, this world was not peaceful for long. As human communities grew and spread across the land, they began to drift from their original harmony. The descendants of Cain built the first cities, forged the first metals, and developed arts, both beautiful and dangerous. The line of Seth maintained older ways, living close to nature and preserving the wisdom of earlier days. Then came the Watchers. These celestial beings, neither fully angels nor gods in the modern sense, observed humanity from their heavenly posts. They watched as humans laughed, fought, loved, and created. Something about these brief, passionate lives called to them, stirring desires foreign to their immortal nature. Their descent changed everything. The Book of Giants tells how these divine beings abandoned their positions, choosing incarnation in physical form. They came down near Mount Hermon, at the borderlands of what would later be called Israel and Lebanon. There, they made a pact among themselves. They would take human wives, teach forbidden arts, and live as lords among mortals. The world transformed under their influence. Human settlements grew into mighty kingdoms overnight. New technologies spread rapidly: metallurgy, weaponry, cosmetics, and astronomy. Women learned the secrets of roots and herbs, of binding and loosing spells. Men gained knowledge of the stars' movements and the forging of swords. What might have taken thousands of years of natural development happened in mere generations. But this rapid advancement came at a terrible price. The Watchers, in sharing heaven's mysteries, upset the natural order. Knowledge meant to unfold gradually was now wielded by beings unprepared for its power. As the Book of Giants suggests, humanity became drunk on these new abilities, turning them toward domination rather than harmony. Worst of all were the offspring of these unions, the Nephilim. Giant in stature and appetite, these beings consumed the world's resources at alarming rates. They ate not just plants but animals, then humans when other food grew scarce. Ancient texts describe them as standing many times the height of normal men, casting long shadows across terrified villages. These were not the gentle giants of children's tales, but monsters with godlike strength and all too human desires. Neither fully divine nor fully mortal, they existed in a painful middle state, powerful yet unfulfilled, mighty yet melancholy. Their very existence represented a cosmic mistake, a breaking of boundaries that couldn't be undone. As the Nephilim multiplied, the once perfect world fell into chaos. Forests were stripped bare to feed their hunger. Animals fled before them. Humans retreated to mountains and deserts, seeking refuge from both the giants and the increasingly bizarre creatures resulting from the Watchers' experiments with nature. The skies darkened with unnatural storms. The ground split open in places, releasing strange vapors and waters from deep below. The ordered world of creation began to unravel at its seams. What Genesis summarizes in a single line, the earth was filled with violence. The Book of Giants expands into a panorama of cosmic disorder. In this broken world, a few humans still remembered the old ways. They looked at the night sky and recognized that something had gone terribly wrong. They cried out to heaven, asking why the stars seemed dimmer, why the seasons grew unpredictable, why their children lived in fear. Their prayers rose up like smoke, ascending to the throne of the Most High, who had watched in silence as his creation descended into madness. The stage was set for divine intervention. The world before the flood had become a testing ground for forbidden knowledge and a battleground between cosmic forces. Something would have to give. Either the experiment of creation would be abandoned entirely, or a cleansing would need to come. Fallen stars and divine crimes. The ancient texts tell of beings neither human nor divine, who once bridged the gap between earth and sky. The Book of Giants names them Watchers, celestial sentinels assigned to observe the unfolding drama of creation without interfering. They were the eyes of heaven, positioned among the stars to witness the growth of the young world. These Watchers, Irin in Aramaic, Grigori in Greek, numbered 200 according to most accounts. Each possessed knowledge of specific heavenly mysteries, the movements of stars, the properties of plants, the patterns of weather, the crafting of metals. Their task was simple: watch, record, report back, never intervene. Yet something about humanity caught their attention. Perhaps it was the brief, bright flame of mortal life, so different from their own endless existence. Maybe it was the beauty of women, with their flowing hair and graceful movements, or perhaps it was freedom they coveted, the right to choose to make mistakes, to feel the full range of emotions denied to perfect beings. Whatever the reason, these celestial observers grew restless at their posts. They whispered among themselves, sharing forbidden thoughts. Their leader, Samyaza, voiced what others dared not. Why should we remain apart? What if we descended and took for ourselves wives from among the daughters of men? The idea spread like fire among the Watchers. To leave their posts would be unthinkable, a betrayal of sacred duty. Yet the thought, once planted, grew irresistible. They gathered on Mount Hermon, that ancient peak straddling worlds, and there they swore an oath bound by terrible curses. They would go down together, take wives, and teach humans the secrets of heaven. Their descent marked the first great rebellion since Lucifer's fall. The Book of Giants describes it as stars streaming down from the night sky, leaving their appointed places and taking human form. They appeared as men of extraordinary height and beauty, their eyes reflecting the cosmos they had abandoned, their voices carrying echoes of celestial music. Human women were captivated by these strange magnetic beings. The daughters of Cain especially welcomed them, seeing in these visitors a chance to acquire power their tribes had long been denied. Marriages were arranged, celebrations held beneath strange colored skies. The Watchers took their chosen brides to remote valleys and mountain ranges, establishing kingdoms apart from ordinary human settlements. But marriage was only the beginning of their transgression. The greater crime came next. They began to teach. Each Watcher revealed secrets meant to remain hidden until humanity had evolved enough to handle such knowledge. Azazel taught weaponry and cosmetics, the arts of war and beauty. Barakiel revealed the signs of lightning and weather prediction. Kokabil shared the mysteries of stars and constellations. Shamsiel opened the paths of the sun to human understanding. Under their tutelage, humans advanced at an unnatural pace. Villages transformed into cities virtually overnight. Women adorned themselves with makeup and jewelry, crafted from formulas never meant for mortal hands. Men forged weapons of strange metals and fought wars with increasingly deadly efficiency. The natural progression of human development, meant to unfold over thousands of years, was compressed into mere generations. This acceleration brought chaos rather than enlightenment. Humans weren't ready for such knowledge. They lacked the wisdom to balance power with responsibility, to understand the consequences of their new abilities. Technologies meant to serve became tools of dominance. Arts meant to elevate became means of manipulation. The divine gift of knowledge, offered too soon and without context, proved poisonous. Meanwhile, the Watchers committed further transgressions. Not content with teaching humans, they began experimenting with the natural world itself. The Book of Giants hints at terrible manipulations, mixing of species, creation of hybrid creatures, attempts to reshape life according to their own designs. These experiments yielded monstrosities that roamed the wilderness, further disrupting the balance of creation. As their crimes multiplied, the Watchers discovered something unexpected. They were changing. Their celestial nature, once pure and perfect, grew clouded with human emotions, jealousy, fear, regret. Their powers, though still formidable, began to wane. Having crossed the boundary between heaven and earth, they found themselves trapped in a middle state, no longer fully divine yet not truly mortal. Most disturbing was their growing awareness of time. As immortal beings, they had never known the pressure of passing days, the weight of years, the fear of ending. Now, in their semi-mortal state, they sensed time's arrow piercing them too. This awareness brought a desperation to their actions, a frantic quality to their continued experiments. What had begun as curious desire became something darker, a hunger to reclaim divine status through knowledge and power rather than obedience. They built great temples where they were worshipped as gods, demanded sacrifices, and established bloodlines that would preserve their influence for generations to come. Heaven watched all this in gathering silence. The seats of the watchers stood empty among the stars. The cosmic order, once perfect in its harmony, suffered distortions that rippled through creation. The rebellion could not go unanswered forever. As the Book of Giants tells it, judgment was already being prepared in the highest realms. A reckoning that would sweep away not just the rebels, but the world their actions had corrupted. The Watchers sensed this coming storm. In quiet moments, looking up at the stars they had abandoned, they felt the growing cold of divine displeasure. Their dreams, once filled with heavenly music, now echoed with warning. But having chosen their path, they could not turn back. Their fall, once begun, would have to run its course to the bitter end. Birth of the Nephilim. From the forbidden unions of Watchers and human women came offspring unlike any the world had seen before. The Book of Giants calls them Nephilim, a name that means the fallen ones, or perhaps those who cause others to fall. They emerge from their mothers' wombs already larger than normal infants, their eyes open and aware, their appetites insatiable from the first breath. They grew at an alarming rate. While human children took years to reach maturity, these hybrid beings achieved adult size in months. And they didn't stop growing. Year after year, they continued to increase in height and girth until they towered over their human mothers and even their Watcher fathers. Ancient texts speak of giants reaching heights of 30 cubits, more than 40 feet tall, though such claims may be exaggerated through centuries of retelling. Their physical appearance marked them as neither fully human nor fully divine. Some accounts describe them with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. Others mention unusual coloration, pale skin that never tanned, hair in impossible shades, eyes that reflected light like animals in darkness. Most striking was their double row of teeth, mentioned in multiple sources, which allowed them to tear through flesh with terrifying efficiency. But more unsettling than their appearance was their nature. The Nephilim embodied the worst qualities of both lineages, the power and knowledge of the Watchers without their original purity, the passions and desires of humans without their capacity for empathy and growth. They were creatures of appetite, forever hungry for food, for experiences, for dominance. Their diet quickly became a source of terror. At first, they consumed only plants, eating entire fields in single meals. Then they turned to animals, hunting the largest beasts to extinction in many regions. When these proved insufficient, they began feeding on humans. The Book of Giants describes them devouring people alive, drinking blood from bowls, and even consuming one another when other food grew scarce. Despite their monstrous qualities, the Nephilim possessed remarkable intelligence. They learned the secrets taught by their fathers and expanded on this knowledge, developing arts and technologies previously unknown. They built massive structures, palaces, temples, monuments to their own might, using techniques lost after the flood. They composed songs and poetry, created systems of writing, and studied the movements of stars with keen interest. This intelligence made them natural rulers. They established themselves as kings and gods over human communities, demanding worship and tribute. Some ruled through fear alone, while others displayed a dark charisma that drew willing followers. Under their reign, human civilization achieved wonders but lost its moral compass, becoming a twisted reflection of divine intent. The Book of Giants gives these beings names that echo through various mythologies. Ohia and Haya, sons of Shemihaza, Mahaway, son of Barakel, Gilgamesh, appearing in both this text and Mesopotamian epic, Ahiram, Hobabish, and others. These weren't just anonymous monsters, but individuals with distinct personalities, powers, and territories. Each giant had inherited specific knowledge from his Watcher father. Ohia understood the movements of stars and could predict celestial events with uncanny accuracy. Haya knew the secrets of metal and fire, forging weapons that could pierce any armor. Mahaway possessed the gift of dream interpretation and could travel vast distances in trance states. Gilgamesh had supernatural strength even beyond that of his brothers. Their names reflect their dual heritage, part celestial, part earthly. They identified themselves both as sons of specific watchers and as rulers of particular regions on Earth. This dual identity caused them constant internal conflict, a sense of belonging nowhere that fueled their rage and ambition. Among humans, reactions to the Nephilim varied. Some worshipped them as divine beings, building temples and offering sacrifices to win their favor. Others fled to remote areas, seeking refuge from their tyranny. A few brave souls resisted, though such resistance typically ended in slaughter. The Book of Giants mentions isolated communities of humans who preserved older ways, maintaining their faith in the Creator while giants ruled the wider world. Perhaps most poignant was the relationship between the Nephilim and their human mothers. These women, having carried the giants in their wombs and nursed them in infancy, watched as their children grew into beings they could no longer understand or control. Some mothers remained fiercely protective, despite their offspring's monstrous nature. Others fled in horror or took their own lives in grief and shame. The Watchers, too, had complex feelings about their giant sons. They had broken divine law to create these beings and felt responsible for their nature. Some fathers attempted to teach their offspring wisdom and restraint, though such lessons rarely took root. Others proudly encouraged their sons' worst tendencies, seeing in their dominance a reflection of their own rebellion against heaven. As generations passed, the situation grew more complex. The original Nephilim began producing children of their own, sometimes with human women, sometimes with their own kind. These second-generation giants were typically smaller than their parents, but still far larger than humans. With each generation, their size decreased while their numbers multiplied, creating a hierarchy of giants that ruled different territories. Their impact on the natural world was devastating. Forests disappeared as they consumed wood for fires and building materials. Animal species vanished beneath their hunting pressure. The climate itself began to change as ecological systems collapsed under their demand for resources. What had once been a garden world slowly transformed into a place of scarcity and struggle. Most disturbing was their effect on human development. Under Nephilim influence, human societies became increasingly violent and corrupt. War became constant, with giants leading armies against rival territories. Human sacrifice grew common, first to appease the giants themselves, then as a regular religious practice. The arts taught by the Watchers, meant to elevate humanity, instead became tools of control and destruction. By the time several centuries had passed since the Watchers' descent, the world had become virtually unrecognizable. The harmonious creation described in Genesis had given way to a nightmare realm of giant kings, human slaves, monstrous creatures, and ecological collapse. Heaven could no longer remain silent. The stage was set for judgment, not just of the rebels who had started this chain of events, but of the broken world their actions had created. Shash, the lost text resurrected. For thousands of years, the Book of Giants survived only in whispers. References appeared in other ancient texts, a line here, a mention there, but the book itself seemed lost to time. Unlike the Book of Enoch, which Ethiopian Christians preserved in its entirety, the giants' narrative appeared to have vanished completely, leaving only faint echoes in world mythology. Then came one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the modern age. In spring of 1947, a Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Ed-Dib was searching for a lost goat among the limestone cliffs overlooking the Dead Sea. Throwing a stone into a cave opening, he heard the unexpected sound of pottery breaking. His curiosity piqued. He entered the cave and discovered clay jars containing ancient scrolls wrapped in linen. This first cave near Qumran would eventually lead to the discovery of 11 caves containing what we now call the Dead Sea Scrolls. Over 900 documents dating from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. Hidden away for nearly 2 millennia, these texts included biblical manuscripts, community rules, calendrical documents, and previously unknown religious writings. Among these recovered treasures were fragments of a text unlike any previously known. Written in Aramaic on parchment, these fragments told stories of giants, their dreams, and their coming destruction. Scholars soon realized they had found pieces of the long-lost Book of Giants, a text mentioned in ancient sources but thought forever vanished. The identification required painstaking work. The fragments were small, damaged by time and elements. Many were no larger than a credit card, containing just a few lines of text. Scholars had to piece them together like a jigsaw puzzle, looking for connecting edges, matching handwriting styles, and continuing narrative threads. What made this discovery particularly significant was its date. The Qumran texts predated previously known references to the Book of Giants by several centuries. This wasn't a late invention, but a genuinely ancient work, circulating among Jewish communities before the time of Jesus. Its presence among the Dead Sea Scrolls suggested it held importance for the Qumran community, possibly the Essenes, a Jewish sect known for their apocalyptic beliefs and ritual purity. But the story of rediscovery wasn't complete. Around the same time, scholars working with ancient Manichaean texts found in Central Asia realized they contained substantial portions of the same narrative. Manichaeism, a religious system founded by the prophet Mani in 3rd century Persia, had incorporated the Book of Giants into its canonical literature, preserving portions lost elsewhere. These Manichaean fragments appeared in multiple languages: Middle Persian, Sogdian, Uyghur, and Coptic, showing how widely the text had spread along the Silk Road. They contained episodes missing from the Qumran fragments, allowing scholars to reconstruct more of the original narrative. Particularly important were manuscripts discovered at Turfan in modern China and at Medinet Mahdi in Egypt. Together, these discoveries revealed something remarkable. The Book of Giants had enjoyed widespread popularity across vastly different cultures and religious traditions. It had been read by Jewish communities in Palestine, by Manichaean merchants in Central Asia, and by Christian monks in Egypt. Despite official exclusion from Jewish and Christian canons, it had survived through underground transmission and adaptation. The recovery process continues today. New technologies allow scholars to read previously illegible fragments. Advanced imaging techniques reveal ink invisible to the naked eye. Computer analysis helps match fragments based on handwriting patterns. With each new breakthrough, more of the lost narrative returns to light after millennia of darkness. What makes this rediscovery so significant is the window it opens into ancient thought. The Book of Giants represents a crucial link between Jewish apocalyptic literature and wider Near Eastern mythology. Its inclusion of Gilgamesh, the hero of Mesopotamian epic, alongside biblical figures, shows how ancient cultures borrowed and adapted stories across religious boundaries. For biblical scholars, the text illuminates obscure passages in Genesis. The cryptic reference to "when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men" expands into a detailed narrative of cosmic rebellion and its consequences. The brief mention of Nephilim, the mighty men who were of old, gains context and background. What the Bible presents as hints and fragments, the Book of Giants explores in depth. Perhaps most importantly, this resurrection challenges our understanding of ancient Jewish thought. Standard assumptions about strict monotheism and rigid boundaries between Jewish and pagan traditions become more complicated when we see how freely certain Jewish communities incorporated elements from surrounding cultures. The lines between orthodox and heterodox appear more fluid than later religious authorities would suggest. The text also offers insight into ancient concerns that still resonate today. The proper limits of knowledge, the relationship between humanity and divine realms, the consequences of environmental exploitation, and the fear of corrupt leadership. Though framed in mythological terms, these themes reflect real anxieties about power, knowledge, and cosmic order. Today, the Book of Giants exists in fragmentary form, with many sections still missing or incomplete. Scholars continue the patient work of translation, reconstruction, and interpretation. Each fragment recovered adds another piece to this ancient puzzle, bringing us closer to understanding a world where giants walked the earth and angels fell from heaven. Enoch, the scribe of judgment. Among the figures who move through the strange landscape of the Book of Giants, none stands taller than Enoch, though he was not physically tall at all. A humble human in a world of monsters and fallen angels, Enoch became the crucial link between earth and heaven during creation's darkest hour. Genesis offers us just a glimpse of this extraordinary man. Enoch walked with God, then he was no more, because God took him. In this single cryptic line lies a story so remarkable that it spawns centuries of legends, texts, and mystical traditions. The Book of Giants expands this brief mention into a tale of cosmic significance. Born 7 generations from Adam, Enoch lived in the shadow of the Watcher's rebellion. While others worshipped these fallen angels or fled their giant offspring, Enoch maintained faith in the Creator alone. He walked a different path, one of righteous behavior, quiet contemplation, and careful observation. While the world around him descended into chaos, he maintained inner harmony. His wisdom didn't come from the Watcher's forbidden teachings, but from direct communion with the divine. Walking alone in wild places, away from corrupted cities, Enoch found himself drawing closer to heaven through prayer and meditation. His mind opened to realities beyond physical sight. The Book of Giants suggests that while others gained knowledge through rebellion, Enoch received wisdom through obedience. This communion deepened until something unprecedented occurred. Enoch began recording divine revelations. Using writing systems still new to humanity, he documented heavenly secrets properly revealed rather than stolen. He became creation's first true scribe, recording not just earthly events but cosmic patterns, angelic hierarchies, and divine judgments. His writings differed fundamentally from the knowledge taught by Watchers. Where their teachings led to violence and corruption, Enoch's writings promoted harmony and righteousness. He described the true nature of the cosmos, not to exploit its powers, but to marvel at its design. His astronomical observations didn't serve sorcery, but helped restore proper calendars and celebrations in a world where times and seasons had grown disordered. As his understanding deepened, Enoch gained abilities that blurred the line between human and divine. He could interpret dreams with perfect accuracy. His prayers reached heaven instantly, without intermediaries. Most remarkably, he could travel in spirit form, his consciousness leaving his body to visit distant places, even realms beyond the physical world. This ability made him uniquely valuable when judgment approached. While the Watchers remained bound to earth by their physical forms, and the giants lacked the spiritual nature to ascend, Enoch could move between worlds. He became the messenger between fallen angels and divine authority, between the giants and their coming doom. The Book of Giants describes how the Nephilim, troubled by apocalyptic dreams, sought someone who could interpret their visions and perhaps intercede for them. They turned to Enoch, sending one of their own, Mahaweh, son of the Watcher Barakel, to seek his counsel. This journey forms one of the text's central episodes, a desperate attempt by doomed beings to understand their fate. Mahaweh traveled enormous distances to find Enoch, who lived far from corrupted regions in a place of natural beauty, still resembling the original creation. Their meeting represents a profound moment, the offspring of rebellion face to face with the embodiment of righteous humanity. Mahaweh, physically enormous but spiritually diminished, standing before Enoch, physically small but spiritually awakened. Enoch listened to the giant's dreams and delivered heaven's response without fear. Unlike others who trembled before the Nephilim, he spoke with quiet authority, knowing he represented something greater than physical might. He confirmed their worst fears. Judgment was indeed coming. The flood would cleanse the earth of their corruption. There would be no reprieve for beings whose very existence violated cosmic law. This role as harbinger of doom earned Enoch many titles in ancient literature: Witness of Judgment, Voice of Heaven, Prophet of the End. Yet the Book of Giants shows him not as a vengeful figure, but as a truth-teller whose words offered one final chance for understanding, if not salvation. He didn't gloat over the giants' coming destruction, but solemnly fulfilled his duty to convey heaven's decree. His judgment extended to the Watchers as well. When these fallen angels begged him to intercede for them, Enoch agreed to carry their petition to heaven. He ascended in spirit form to the divine throne, presenting their case with honesty and compassion. But the answer came back unchanged. Their crimes could not be forgiven. Their punishment would be eternal binding beneath the earth, followed by final judgment at the end of time. Why was Enoch chosen for this cosmic role? The Book of Giants suggests several reasons. His righteousness made him a fitting counterweight to surrounding corruption. His scribal abilities allowed him to record judgments accurately. His spiritual development had prepared him to witness divine realities without being destroyed by them. Perhaps most importantly, he represented what humanity could have been and might still become after cleansing waters receded. The relationship between Enoch and the giants reveals the text's deeper theological concerns. The giants, for all their physical might, lack the spiritual capacity that makes Enoch truly powerful. They can destroy bodies but cannot save their own souls. Their knowledge, stolen from heaven rather than properly received, proves useless in the face of divine judgment. Enoch, physically vulnerable but spiritually alive, ultimately holds the true power in their exchanges. As the flood approached, Enoch's role shifted from messenger to witness. The Book of Giants describes him observing the unfolding judgment, not with joy, but with solemn understanding of its necessity. While Noah built his ark to preserve physical life, Enoch preserved wisdom and memory, ensuring that future generations would understand both the corruption that necessitated cleansing and the path toward restored harmony. Then comes the moment Genesis describes so briefly. He was no more, because God took him. The Book of Giants expands this into a glorious ascension. Rather than suffering death, Enoch was transformed, his physical form changing into something more celestial. He was lifted bodily into heaven, the first human to enter divine realms without passing through death's door. Later traditions would build on this moment, describing Enoch's transformation into the angel Metatron, heaven's celestial scribe. Though these elaborations go beyond the Book of Giants itself, they reflect an enduring fascination with this figure who stood between worlds. Not half divine like the Nephilim, but fully human, yet welcomed into divine company. In the end, Enoch represents hope within the otherwise dark narrative of the Book of Giants. While fallen angels and their offspring face destruction, his story suggests another possibility, that humans who walk righteously might transcend current limitations and draw closer to their divine source. In a text primarily about boundaries violated and divine anger unleashed, Enoch offers a glimpse of boundaries properly crossed and divine welcome extended. Fragmented but powerful. The Book of Giants comes to us not as a seamless narrative, but as scattered pieces of an ancient puzzle. Unlike biblical texts preserved through careful copying over centuries, this strange document survived only in fragments, some no larger than a fingernail, others containing just a few words or sentences. Yet from these broken remnants emerges a story of remarkable power and complexity. The structure we can reconstruct suggests a work of considerable sophistication. It wasn't simply a collection of legends, but a carefully crafted narrative moving between different perspectives and time frames. Some passages speak with the voice of an omniscient narrator, describing events from above. Others take the viewpoint of specific giants, particularly Ohia, Hahia, and Mahaway, allowing readers to glimpse the unfolding catastrophe through their eyes. What makes this fragmented text so compelling is its unusual perspective. Most ancient religious literature presents divine judgment from the viewpoint of the righteous or the divine. The Book of Giants dares to show us apocalypse from the perspective of the condemned. We witness the mounting dread of beings who slowly realize they've been deemed cosmic mistakes, their very existence an offense to creation's order. Through damaged sections and missing pieces, we glimpse the emotional lives of these doomed giants. They experience confusion as troubling dreams begin to plague their sleep. Anxiety mounts as they consult one another, comparing visions and seeking interpretations. Hope flares briefly when they send Mahaway to find Enoch, then collapses when the verdict returns unchanged. Finally comes despair as waters begin to rise around them, confirming that no reprieve will come. This psychological depth separates the Book of Giants from simpler morality tales. Its protagonists aren't portrayed as purely evil, but as complex beings caught between worlds, products of a forbidden union who never asked to exist. Their destruction becomes not just deserved punishment, but cosmic tragedy, necessary yet sorrowful. The text's fragmentation actually enhances this emotional impact. Gaps in the narrative force readers to participate actively, imagining what might fill the spaces between preserved sections. The broken form mirrors the broken world it describes, a creation splintered by rebellion, a harmonious order now in pieces. Reading the Book of Giants becomes an experience of piecing together meaning from fragments, much as its characters try to assemble understanding from fragmentary dreams and visions. Imagery in the surviving portions shows remarkable vividness. We read of giants whose height reaches the clouds, of trees uprooted like weeds in their hands, of mountains used as thrones. We see Mahawe flying between distant points, his wings carrying him across vast territories. We witness dreams where great tablets of stone descend from heaven, inscribed with judgments that cannot be erased. The cosmology revealed through these fragments presents Earth as just one realm among many. Above stretches the divine world with its various heavens and angelic hierarchies. Below lies the abyss where rebellious watchers will be imprisoned. Between these realms move beings like Enoch, who can ascend to heaven while still living, and fallen angels who descended to earth but can never return home. This multi-layered universe reflects ancient Near Eastern concepts rather than later medieval cosmologies. It presents a world where divine and earthly realms aren't entirely separate but touch at certain points. Mountains reach toward heaven. Dreams open windows between worlds. Specially gifted individuals can travel between realms. This permeable boundary between worlds makes the Watcher's transgression possible, but also allows for divine intervention when that transgression goes too far. The Book of Giants differs from canonical scripture in significant ways. It features named protagonists among the corrupted rather than focusing solely on the righteous. It explores moral ambiguity where divine judgment, while justified, falls on beings who are victims of their own nature. It incorporates elements from multiple mythological traditions, showing how ancient Jewish thinkers engaged with surrounding cultures. Most striking is how the text handles divine justice. Unlike the flood narrative in Genesis, where wickedness is simply stated as fact, the Book of Giants shows us the specific sins that provoked heaven's response. We see the Watchers teaching forbidden arts, the giants consuming beyond sustainable limits, and hybrid creatures distorting natural order. Divine judgment appears not as arbitrary punishment, but as necessary restoration of cosmic balance. The language preserved in these fragments reflects their ancient origins. Written primarily in Aramaic at Qumran, with versions also existing in Middle Persian, Sogdian, and other tongues, the text uses imagery and expressions typical of Second Temple Judaism. Technical terms for angels, demons, and cosmic regions reveal connections to other apocalyptic literature from this period, particularly the Book of Enoch. Despite its fragmentary nature, or perhaps because of it, the Book of Giants continues to fascinate scholars and spiritual seekers alike. Its broken pieces offer glimpses into an ancient worldview where the boundaries between myth and history hadn't yet hardened, where angels might literally walk among humans, and where dreams could contain messages from beyond our realm. The text raises profound questions that transcend its ancient context. What happens when beings possess knowledge without wisdom to use it properly? What are the consequences when natural boundaries are violated? Can those born from transgression escape the legacy of their origins? These themes resonate across centuries, speaking to modern concerns about technology, environmental exploitation, and moral responsibility. In its damaged form, the Book of Giants reminds us that some of the most powerful stories come to us incomplete. Like a partially excavated city or a symphony missing movements, its fragments invite us to engage actively with the past, to imagine what might have filled now empty spaces, and to recognize that even shattered narratives can contain profound truths about our world and ourselves. The Watchers in chains, as the giants' dreams grew darker and their fears mounted, their fathers, the fallen Watchers, faced their own growing dread. These once celestial beings who had abandoned heaven's courts for earthly pleasures began to realize the full consequences of their rebellion. The Book of Giants describes their panic as divine judgment approached, a panic all the more terrible because they, unlike their offspring, fully understood what they had lost. The Watchers gathered in secret councils away from human settlements and giant encampments. In mountain caves and remote valleys, they discussed their deteriorating situation. Their physical forms, once assumed voluntarily, had become prisons. Their divine knowledge, once their pride, now showed them with perfect clarity the disaster they had created and could not undo. Most troubling were the changes in the natural world around them. The Watchers, with their cosmic awareness, noticed signs invisible to others, subtle shifts in stellar alignments, unusual animal migrations, changes in plant growth patterns. The world was preparing for transformation. Creation itself seemed to be withdrawing from their corrupting presence, pulling away like healthy flesh from infection. Their leader, Samyaza, who had first proposed descent to earth, called for desperate measures. Perhaps if they combined their remaining powers, they might ascend again and beg forgiveness. Perhaps if they undid their teachings, reclaiming forbidden knowledge from humanity, they might avert judgment. Perhaps if they destroyed their own offspring, heaven might show mercy. But in their hearts, they knew such efforts would prove futile. The Book of Giants describes how these fallen angels turned to the one being who might intercede for them, Enoch, the human who walked with God. They sent messages begging him to plead their case before heaven's throne. Their appeals mixed genuine remorse with desperate self-preservation, acknowledging their sins while seeking to escape consequences. Enoch agreed to carry their petition, not from sympathy for their plight, but from obedience to divine will. The text describes his ascent to heaven's gates, bearing the Watcher's plea like a scroll clutched in human hands. Before the dazzling light of divine presence, he read their words, omitting nothing, adding nothing. Then he waited in silence for heaven's response. The answer came with terrible finality. The Watchers had crossed a boundary that could not be uncrossed. Their knowledge of divine mysteries, combined with physical forms and earthly desires, represented a cosmic threat that could not be allowed to continue. They would be bound beneath the earth until final judgment at the end of days. After that, eternal fire awaited. There would be no return to heaven's courts, no restoration to former glory. Enoch descended with this verdict written on tablets of stone. The Watchers gathered to hear their sentence, hope still flickering in eyes that had once reflected celestial light. As Enoch read heaven's decree, that light finally died. The proud beings who had once stood in divine presence now fell prostrate on earth's dust, their wails echoing through mountain ranges. What followed was a scene of cosmic subjugation. The Book of Giants describes 4 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, descending with chains forged in divine fire. These weren't physical restraints, but bindings of will and essence, constraints that would hold rebellious spirits for millennia. Each archangel had specific duties in this imprisonment. Michael, strongest of heaven's warriors, subdued the Watchers who resisted. His flaming sword severed their last connections to celestial power, rendering them defenseless. Gabriel prepared the place of confinement, a vast chasm deep beneath desert sands, far from human habitation. Raphael bound their physical forms, removing their ability to change shape or escape earthly limitations. Uriel sealed their prison with signs no power could break. The Watchers were led in procession to their underground prison. Those who had taught astronomy could no longer see the stars. Those who had revealed the secrets of roots and herbs were buried far from growing things. Those who had shared knowledge of metals and gems were confined where no light would reach them. Their punishment reflected their crimes with perfect, terrible symmetry. Most devastating was their separation from the children they had fathered. The Book of Giants suggests that despite their rebellion, many Watchers had developed genuine love for their giant offspring. Now they could only listen helplessly as the sounds of judgment began above. Storms gathering, waters rising, their children crying out in growing terror. The text describes Samyaza's final moments before imprisonment, standing at the edge of the chasm, looking back at the world he had corrupted. He sees distant mountains where his giant sons still roam free, unaware their fathers can no longer help them. He glimpses human cities where his teachings continue to spread chaos. Then darkness closes around him as he's thrust into confinement beneath the world. Even in chains, the Watchers retained consciousness. This was part of their punishment, to remain aware through long ages, contemplating their rebellion and its consequences. They would feel the death of each giant offspring as waters rose above the highest mountains. They would sense the gradual fading of their influence from human memory. They would experience time's passage with painful clarity, counting years, centuries, millennia in darkness. Yet their influence didn't entirely vanish. The Book of Giants hints that something of the Watchers remained in the world, echoes of their teachings preserved in ancient texts, whispers of their names in forbidden rituals, memories of their knowledge encoded in symbols and myths. Though physically confined, tendrils of their rebellion continued to touch human affairs through the knowledge they had unleashed. Most significantly, their imprisonment didn't resolve the problem of their offspring. The giants remained above, growing increasingly desperate as they sensed divine anger gathering like storm clouds. Without their father's guidance, they turned to their dreams for answers and to the one human who might interpret those dreams: Enoch, the walking prophet who had delivered heaven's verdict to their fathers. The parallel fates of watchers and giants form the emotional core of this ancient text. Below, immortal beings who chose mortality face eternal confinement. Above, their children, born from cosmic transgression, face annihilation. Both groups reach for salvation that remains just beyond grasp. Both turn to Enoch, who stands between worlds but can offer only truth, not escape. This separation of fathers and children adds tragic depth to an already somber narrative. The watchers, bound in darkness, can sense their offspring's growing panic, but can offer no comfort. The giants, facing destruction above, call out for fathers who cannot answer. Divine justice divides what unholy union had joined, ensuring that rebellion's consequences play out in painful isolation. The image of the chained watchers would echo through later religious traditions. Early Christian texts would refer to angels held in darkness with eternal chains. Medieval demonology would elaborate on fallen angels imprisoned beneath the earth. The Book of Giants gives us perhaps the earliest detailed account of this motif. Divine beings bound not by physical limitations, but by divine decree, their punishment perfectly calibrated to their transgression. As the watchers languished beneath the earth, the stage was set for the final act of this cosmic drama. Their giant offspring, abandoned and increasingly desperate, would seek their own answers from the one human who still walked between worlds. Their growing terror, captured in dreams and visions, would reveal how even the mightiest fall before divine judgment, when creation itself demands cleansing. Klashag, the dreams of Mahaway. Among the giants roaming the antediluvian world, one figure emerges with unusual clarity from the fragmented text: Mahaway, son of the Watcher Barakel. Unlike his brothers who reveled in physical might, Mahaway possessed gifts of a different kind: the ability to fly vast distances on mighty wings and to remember his dreams with perfect clarity. These talents would make him the central figure in one of the Book of Giants' most compelling episodes. As judgment approached, the giants began experiencing disturbing dreams. Visions of destruction visited their sleep: great gardens withering, mighty trees being uprooted, endless waters covering mountain peaks. These dreams left them shaken, their usual confidence replaced by creeping dread. Though masters of the physical world, they found themselves helpless before these night visions that seemed to reveal approaching doom. Two giants in particular, Ohia and Hahia, sons of Samyaza, experienced dreams so vivid they couldn't dismiss them as mere fancy. Ohia dreamed of a great tablet with writing he couldn't read, descending from heaven like a stone of judgment. Haya saw a magnificent garden with thousands of trees being uprooted and destroyed by angels wielding flaming swords. Both woke in terror, sensing these weren't ordinary dreams, but glimpses of coming reality. The giants gathered in council to discuss these omens. Some dismissed them as meaningless shadows. Others suggested fighting harder against humans, thinking their nightmares stemmed from guilty conscience. A few proposed massive offerings to appease whatever powers might be sending these visions. But Mahaway offered a different solution: seek interpretation from the one human who truly understood divine matters, Enoch, who walked with God. This proposal wasn't accepted easily. Many giants considered consulting a human beneath their dignity. Others feared what Enoch might reveal. Some argued they should capture him instead, forcing him to use his knowledge for their benefit. But Mahaway insisted on a respectful approach, sensing that only truth, however painful, could help them now. The council eventually agreed, but a new problem emerged. Enoch lived far away, having withdrawn from corrupted regions to a place where creation still reflected its original purity. The journey would cross vast territories, some hostile to giants. Who would make this dangerous pilgrimage? After heated debate, Mahaway himself volunteered. With his ability to fly, he alone might cover the distance quickly enough. The Book of Giants describes his departure in vivid terms. He spreads enormous wings, whether physical or metaphorical remains ambiguous, and launches skyward from a mountain peak. Below him unfolds the corrupted world. Cities where humans worship fallen angels, forests stripped bare by giant appetites, battlefields where unnatural creatures fight for territory. He flies for days, crossing oceans and mountain ranges, following signs that lead to Enoch's dwelling place. The text portrays this journey as both physical and spiritual. Mahaway travels not just across geography, but across realms of being. With each league he covers, he moves further from the corrupted world of his birth and closer to spaces where divine order still prevails. The air grows clearer, light more pristine, natural harmony more evident. When he finally spots Enoch's dwelling, a simple structure on a mountain overlooking paradise-like valleys, he recognizes it as a place untouched by his father's rebellion. Their meeting forms one of the text's most striking scenes. Mahaway, a being of enormous size and supernatural origin, stands before Enoch, a human of ordinary appearance but extraordinary spirit. The giant must bend down to address the man, yet somehow appears diminished in this encounter. Physical stature means nothing in the presence of true spiritual authority. Mahaway delivers his message respectfully, describing the dreams troubling his brothers and himself. He mentions his own recurring nightmare, a great tablet floating on endless waters, all land vanished beneath flood, his own name appearing and then disappearing from its surface. His usual confidence gives way to vulnerable questioning. What do these visions mean? Can they be averted? Is there hope for beings like himself, born of forbidden union? Enoch listens without interruption, his face showing neither fear of the giant nor glee at his distress. When Mahaway finishes speaking, Enoch confirms what the giants have already suspected. Their dreams reveal coming judgment. The world will indeed be cleansed by water. All flesh corrupted by Watcher influence will perish. There is no escape for beings whose very existence violates divine order. The giant receives this news with surprising dignity. Unlike his brothers who might have responded with rage or threats, Mahaway accepts Enoch's words as truth. He asks not for ways to escape, but for understanding. Why must it be this way? What cosmic law have they broken simply by existing? The text presents him as a tragic figure, doomed not through personal wickedness, but through the circumstances of his birth. Enoch explains that creation follows patterns established from the beginning. The mixing of heavenly and earthly natures produced beings who belong fully to neither realm. Such mixing destabilizes the cosmic order itself. The flood comes not as punishment alone, but as necessary restoration of boundaries essential to creation's continued existence. Water will cleanse what has been defiled, allowing Earth to begin anew. Before departing, Mahaway asks one final question. Will any memory of the giants remain after waters recede? Or will they be erased completely, as if they never existed? Enoch's answer offers cold comfort. Their physical forms will perish and their bones will lie buried in earth, but stories of their time will persist as warnings for future generations. They will become symbols of boundaries crossed and divine patience exhausted. The return journey unfolds differently than the outward one. Mahaway flies not with eager purpose, but with heavy heart. The landscape below appears not as conquered territory, but as temporary domain, soon to be reclaimed by water. He looks at forests, mountains, and plains with new awareness of their transience. Even his mighty wings, carrying him homeward, will soon fail against rising floods. When he arrives at the giant's gathering place, his brothers meet him with eager questions. Has he found Enoch? What did the human prophet say? Is there hope? Can the dream's meaning be changed? Mahaway relates everything without softening the message. Their fate is sealed. The waters are coming. No mountain will stand high enough, no strength prove sufficient against this cleansing. Some giants respond with rage, threatening to destroy what remains of human settlements in their final days. Others fall into despair, already seeing themselves drowning in dreams that now visit them while awake. A few, including Mahaway himself, achieve a kind of somber acceptance. They begin contemplating what it means to face end. These beings who had thought themselves nearly immortal, now confronting their own extinction. In the final fragments describing Mahaway, we see him standing alone on a mountaintop, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. Unlike his brothers who rage below, he has achieved a measure of understanding, his dual nature, part celestial through his father, part earthly through creation itself, allows him to glimpse both perspectives. He sees both the necessity of cleansing and the tragedy of his own ending. The dreams that troubled Mahawe's sleep have become waking reality. The tablet, floating on endless water, now materializes as actual flood approaching from all horizons. His name, which appeared and vanished in dreams, will indeed be erased from the book of living beings. Yet something in his questioning, his journey to truth rather than denial, gives his narrative a dignity absent from accounts of his brothers. Through Mahawe's dreams and journey, the Book of Giants achieves something remarkable, inviting readers to empathize with beings traditionally portrayed as monstrous antagonists. We glimpse the tragedy of creatures born through no choice of their own into cosmic violation, who dream of destruction because destruction is their inescapable fate. In Mahawe's flight to Enoch and return with unwelcome truth, we witness courage and integrity from an unexpected source. Names of the Titans. The Book of Giants does something remarkable for an ancient text. It gives individual names and personalities to beings typically portrayed as an anonymous, threatening mass. These aren't simply the giants as a collective, but distinct individuals with their own characteristics, relationships, and fates. Through fragmentary passages, we glimpse a society as complex as any human civilization, though twisted by its unnatural origins. Most prominent among them are Ohia and Haya, sons of the Watcher leader Samyaza. Their names might derive from the O and Ah of exclamation, suggesting their birth provoked awe and terror. As firstborn sons of the Watcher's chief, they enjoyed special status among their kind. The text portrays them as inseparable brothers, yet opposite in temperament. Ohia impulsive and warlike, Haya thoughtful and given to brooding. Both brothers experienced prophetic dreams as judgment approached. Ohia saw a great tablet dipped in water, names being washed away one by one, including his own. Haya dreamed of a garden with countless trees being uprooted by cosmic gardeners, leaving nothing but emptiness. These parallel visions terrified beings accustomed to inspiring fear rather than feeling it themselves. Then comes Mahawe, son of the Watcher Barakel, whose journey to Enoch forms the narrative's emotional core. His name suggests, who is he? An appropriate question for a being caught between identities. Unlike his more physically imposing brothers, Mahawe possessed the gift of flight and unusual sensitivity to dreams and omens. The text portrays him as something like a shaman among giants, more attuned to spiritual realities than his kind typically were. Perhaps most surprising is the appearance of Gilgamesh in this Jewish text. The famous hero of Mesopotamian epic enters the Book of Giants as one of the Nephilim himself, a strange cultural crossover showing how ancient storytellers borrowed freely across traditional boundaries. His inclusion suggests that early Jewish audiences would have recognized this name from surrounding cultures, understanding the reference without explanation. In the fragments we possess, Gilgamesh appears as a giant of particular might and authority. His dream features a mighty tree growing at the world's center, sheltering all living things beneath its branches. He watches in horror as divine beings take axes to this tree, cutting it down despite the creatures depending on its shade. The imagery clearly parallels the coming destruction of the world that fostered giant life. Other names flicker through the damaged text. Ahiram, whose name means my brother is exalted, and who ruled territories in what would later be called Lebanon. Hobabish, described as having skin like the color of certain stones, and possessing unusual strength even among giants. Asbeel, whose name connects to fertility and who supposedly fathered more children than any other giant. And Nikolai, described as cultivating rare plants and creating unusual hybrid creatures. Female giants receive less attention, reflecting the patriarchal perspective of ancient texts. Yet we catch glimpses of figures like Badenosh, whose name means daughter of humanity, despite her mixed parentage, and who served as something like a priestess among her kind. The text hints at complex relationships between male and female giants, with suggestions of both conflict and cooperation within their society. These named individuals represented just the elite among giant society. The Book of Giants indicates a complex hierarchy existed among these beings. First-generation giants, direct offspring of watchers and human women, stood tallest and commanded greatest authority. Each subsequent generation decreased somewhat in height and power, creating a stratified society where lineage determined status. By the time several centuries had passed since the Watcher's descent, giants of various sizes populated different territories, with the greatest maintaining rule over lesser kin. Their society mirrored human kingdoms, but with crucial differences. Giant rulers built massive structures requiring their enormous strength, palaces with doorways 30 feet high, thrones carved from mountain peaks, roads wide enough for their massive stride. They developed writing systems to record their histories and achievements, created distinctive artwork featuring their exploits, and established traditions to maintain their dominance over territories.
She's made up her mind to live pretty smart, learn to budget responsibly right from the start. She spends a little less and puts more into savings, keeps her blood pressure low and credit score raises. She's cutting debt right out of her life. She tracks her cash flow on a spreadsheet at night.
Boring money moves make kinda lame songs, but they sound pretty sweet to your wallet. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
Most disturbing was their relationship with humans living under their rule. Some giants maintained humans as slaves or servants, while others kept them as livestock for consumption. In regions where giants held sway, humans lived in constant terror, hiding in caves and remote areas to avoid notice. A few human communities maintained uneasy alliances with their giant neighbors, offering tribute in exchange for protection against other giant clans. The Book of Giants suggests these beings weren't merely physical anomalies but possessed supernatural abilities inherited from their celestial fathers. Ohia could call down lightning during battle. Hahia possessed uncanny skill with plants and healing arts. Gilgamesh had strength beyond even his massive size. Mahawe could travel through dreams as well as physically. These powers made them godlike in human eyes, leading to worship practices that further offended divine order. As their doom approached, these distinctive personalities responded differently. Some, like Ohia, advocated fighting against the coming judgment, believing their combined might could resist even divine wrath. Others, like Hahia, fell into depression and fatalism, seeing the inevitability of their end. Gilgamesh proposed building structures tall enough to survive rising waters. Mahawe urged acceptance of their fate as cosmic necessity rather than simple punishment. Their individualized responses humanize beings typically portrayed as monstrous antagonists. Through their eyes, we glimpse the tragedy of creatures born through no choice of their own into violation of cosmic law. Though their destruction proves necessary for world renewal, we're invited to see them not as faceless evil, but as distinct personalities confronting their own extinction with varying degrees of dignity, rage, and sorrow. Perhaps most poignant is how the text suggests these giants knew themselves to be wrong, not just morally, but ontologically. Their dreams reveal subconscious awareness that their very existence violated creation's proper order. Despite their physical might and territorial dominance, something within recognized they couldn't last. Like invasive species in a fragile ecosystem, they sensed the inevitable correction coming to restore balance they had disrupted. The naming of these beings serves a deeper purpose than mere storytelling detail. By giving giants individual identities, the Book of Giants undermines the comfortable distance usually maintained between monsters and readers. These aren't anonymous threats easily dismissed, but beings with dreams, relationships, and perspectives of their own. Their necessary destruction becomes tragedy rather than simple justice, a cosmic correction with genuine victims. This complexity elevates the Book of Giants above simple morality tales. While affirming divine judgment's necessity, it acknowledges the pain involved when created beings, even wrongly created ones, face extinction. It reminds readers that cosmic order sometimes requires terrible sacrifices, that restoration can involve destruction, and that creatures caught in larger patterns may suffer regardless of personal guilt or innocence.
Jack of Hearts.
In naming the giants, this ancient text achieves something surprisingly modern. It complicates a narrative typically told in black and white. The line between monstrous and human blurs.
Ace of
Readers
Hearts.
find themselves empathizing with beings tradition portrays as enemies. Divine judgment remains
Ace of
necessary,
diamonds.
but we're shown its cost in individualized
2
suffering.
of diamonds.
Through names and personal details, the Book
6
of Giants
of diamonds.
transforms
10
stock
of
villains
diamonds.
into complex characters caught in a cosmic tragedy beyond their
King
control
of
or
diamonds.
comprehension. V2
4
Tai latest
of
copy
diamonds.
publish Mahaway's Journey to the Ends of the Earth.
5 of diamonds.
In the twilight of the antediluvian world, with shadows of doom gathering on the horizon,
9 of
the
diamonds.
giants turn to one of their own for salvation. Mahaway, known for
Queen
his
of
swiftness and
diamonds.
courage, was chosen for an extraordinary mission.
8 of diamonds.
Unlike his kin who terrorized the earth, Mahaway
3
possessed
of
a spark
diamonds.
of wisdom
7
that set
of
him apart.
diamonds.
The fragmentary texts tell us he could fly,
Queen
soaring on
of
wings
clubs.
not made by human hands, a
9
gift
of
perhaps
clubs.
inherited from his celestial fathers.
5 of
The
clubs.
journey
Ace
before
of
him was
clubs.
like none other.
King
Mahaway
of
would
clubs.
need to cross the boundaries that separate our world from the hidden realms where Enoch dwelt.
6 of clubs.
The ancient scribe had been taken by God, walking
4
with the
of
divine
clubs.
and no longer bound to earth.
3
To reach
of
him,
clubs.
Mahaway would need to travel beyond the mountains of darkness, past the pillars of heaven, to the place where sky meets eternity. The
Jack
text
of
describes how
diamonds.
Mahaway spread his wings under the morning sky.
7
The air
of
trembled
spades.
as he rose, his massive
Spades
form
broken.
casting a shadow like
8
a moving
of
mountain below.
spades.
For days he flew, crossing vast
8
oceans
of
where no
hearts.
ships had sailed, over forests untouched by the axes of men. The
2
journey
of
tested even his
spades.
supernatural endurance.
Jack
Winds born
of
from the breath of
spades.
angels buffeted his path.
3
Rain that had
of
not yet fallen on
spades.
human lands soaked his wings.
6 of hearts.
As night fell on his second day of flight, Mahaway encountered the boundaries of the world. Here,
2
the ancient
of
writers
clubs.
tell us the very fabric of
10
creation
of
begins
clubs.
to thin. Stars hung
Jack
closer to the
of
earth.
clubs.
The moon seemed close enough to touch.
4 of spades.
Beyond lay the paradise where Enoch had been taken, a garden of perpetual spring where death
6
and decay
of
had never entered.
spades.
Mahaway crossed
Queen
rivers
of
of light that
spades.
flowed upward to the heavens. He passed guardian
King of
beings with eyes of
spades.
flame who challenged his right to
7
proceed.
of hearts.
The text speaks of riddles he
Ace of
solved,
spades.
of names of power he uttered that opened
10
celestial
of
gates.
hearts.
With each barrier
9
crossed,
of
Mahaway felt
spades.
himself changing, growing
2
smaller
of
in the
hearts.
presence of greater and greater holiness. At last, after what
King
seemed like an
of
age,
hearts.
Mahaway reached the edge of paradise. The air here was sweet
7
with
of
perfumes
clubs.
unknown to earth. Light emerged
Queen
not from
of
sun or
hearts.
moon, but from the very fabric of creation itself.
3 of hearts.
And there, tending a garden of impossible
5 of
flowers, stood
spades.
Enoch, the man who walked with God.
8 of
Not
clubs.
a giant or angel or demon dared approach
10
this
of
place
spades.
uninvited. Yet Mahaway, driven by
5
the
of
desperation of his
hearts.
doomed race, gathered his courage and descended. The earth did not crack beneath his feet here as it did in the lands of men. Instead, he found himself light as thought, standing before the ancient scribe who looked upon him not with fear, but with gentle pity. Their meeting marked a moment when two worlds touched, the realm of the condemned and the sanctuary of the saved. Mahaway, son of fallen angels, faced Enoch, beloved of heaven. The giant knelt before the human, a gesture that would have been unthinkable in the world below. With trembling voice, he delivered the message from his brethren, a plea for mercy, a request for wisdom, a desperate hope for some way to escape the coming flood. This journey, described in fragmented texts recovered from ancient caves, stands as one of the most haunting episodes in the Book of Giants. It speaks to the liminal nature of the Nephilim themselves, neither fully divine nor human, seeking answers in realms where they did not belong. Mahaway's flight represents their last hope, a desperate reaching across cosmic boundaries by beings who had already transgressed the order of creation by their very existence. And as we shall see, the answer Mahaway received would bring no comfort to the giants awaiting his return. Giants in panic terror spread through the encampments of the giants as dreams of destruction visited them night after night. The fragments of the Book of Giants paint a vivid picture of these mighty beings reduced to trembling fear. Ohia dreamt of a lush garden destroyed by fire. Hahia saw a stone tablet bearing the names of the giants, slowly being washed clean by water. Others dreamt of chains binding their limbs, of darkness swallowing the sun, of stars falling like rain. With each passing night, their dreams grew more vivid, more terrifying. The giants who had once stalked the earth as living gods now huddled together, sharing their nightmares in hushed voices. Some denied the visions, clinging to their belief in their own immortality. Others fell into despair, abandoning their feasting and revelry for somber contemplation of the end. In one particularly haunting passage, the text describes how Gilgamesh wept openly before his brethren. This mighty warrior, who had slain dragons and scaled mountains, now found himself undone by dreams of water rising above the highest peaks. Even the tallest of us will not survive, he lamented, nor will the strongest among us push back the waters. The panic spread beyond the giants to their human followers. Cults that had worshipped these beings as gods now saw their idols shaken by fear. Priests who had conducted bloody rituals in their names found their questions met with confused silence or rage. The order these beings had established, corrupt and violent though it was, began to crumble as their fear became known. Some giants turned to violence, as if attempting to defy the coming judgment through sheer force. They attacked human settlements with renewed fury, built greater monuments to their own glory, and demanded more sacrifices from their worshippers. But these actions brought them no peace. Each night, the dreams returned, more vivid than before. Others sought escape. They dug deep into mountain ranges, creating vast caverns they believed would shelter them from the coming flood. They built great vessels of wood and pitch, crude imitations of what Noah was constructing under divine guidance. But their efforts were tainted by their corrupt nature, doomed to fail before they began. The most desperate among them turned to sorcery, using the forbidden knowledge their fathers had brought from heaven. They cast spells meant to command the weather, to hold back rain and calm storms. They drew symbols of power on cave walls, invoked names that humans were not meant to know, and sacrificed ever more precious things in exchange for protection. As Mahaway journeyed to find Enoch, the panic among his kind reached its peak. The fragments describe gatherings of giants in valleys and on mountaintops, their numbers so great that the ground groaned beneath them. They debated strategies for survival, argued over the meaning of their dreams, and sometimes fought among themselves as their fear turned to anger. The human women who had borne these beings watched with grief as their children raged against a fate they could not change. Some of these women, the text suggests, had come to regret their union with the Watchers, seeing now the monstrous nature of their offspring revealed by fear. In their panic, the giants revealed something surprising, a capacity for emotion beyond hunger and rage. They showed fear, yes, but also something like regret. In one fragment, a giant whose name is lost to damage speaks of beauty they had destroyed, of innocence they had corrupted, of a world they had helped to spoil. It is a moment of self-awareness rare in these texts, a glimpse of consciousness awakening just before its extinction. As days passed with no word from Mahaway, the panic only deepened. Giants who had never known prayer began to call out to heaven, though they feared no answer would come. Those who had reveled in their strength now felt its limits. Those who had mocked human frailty now envied the possibility of mercy extended to Noah and his family. And still, the dreams came, night after night, of water rising above the mountains and of darkness claiming the world. Enoch's vision. When Mahaway finally stood before Enoch in that realm beyond the world, the ancient scribe's eyes were filled with neither hatred nor fear. Instead, they held something the giant had never encountered before: divine compassion mixed with unyielding truth. Enoch, once a man of flesh and blood, now dwelled in communion with eternal powers. His presence radiated light that made Mahaway shield his eyes. Enoch listened silently as the giant delivered his message, pleading for some way to escape the coming judgment. When Mahaway finished speaking, a hush fell over the garden. Birds ceased their songs. Leaves stopped their gentle rustling. Even the waters of paradise grew still, as if creation itself waited for Enoch's response. "I have seen what is to come," Enoch finally spoke, his voice gentle, yet carrying the weight of prophecy. "Heaven has shown me the cleansing of the world. I have witnessed the binding of your fathers in chains of darkness. I have seen the end of your kind written in the stars." The ancient scribe then closed his eyes, and as he did, visions appeared in the air around them, images formed not of light or shadow, but of pure truth made visible. Mahaway saw the heavens open and waters descend like curtains of judgment. He saw his brethren crying out as mountains disappeared beneath waves. He saw the Watchers, bound and helpless, watching the destruction of their children. 300 years, Enoch continued. Your fathers have wept for you. They have pleaded for mercy, but their pleas echo in chambers where they cannot be heard. They chose their path when they abandoned their posts in heaven. They sealed your fate when they took human wives and taught what was forbidden. The visions shifted to show the world before the corruption. Verdant gardens, peaceful creatures, humans living in harmony with earth and heaven. Then came the descent of the Watchers, bringing knowledge that burned like fire, desires that consumed like hunger, power that crushed like stone. Look upon what was and what now is, Enoch said, gesturing to the visions. Look upon what should have been and what your kind has made instead. The earth groans beneath your weight. The blood of innocence cries out from the soil. Even the beasts of the field flee from your shadow. Mahaway fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the truth revealed in Enoch's vision. He saw how the giants appeared from heaven's perspective, not mighty heroes, but monstrous distortions of the natural order. He glimpsed, for perhaps the first time, the terror his kind had brought to the world. Is there no hope? Mahaway asked, his voice reduced to a whisper. Enoch's face softened slightly. The waters will come, he said. This cannot be changed. But there is a truth beyond this judgment that even I can barely glimpse. Mercy flows deeper than justice. Love reaches farther than law. What this means for your kind, I cannot say. But nothing that exists is ever fully lost to the one who made all things. These words, cryptic though they were, would later be understood by some scholars to reference the transformation of the giant spirits after death, their continuation as entities of another kind. But for Mahaway, they offered little comfort in the face of immediate destruction. Enoch then placed his hands on tablets of stone that appeared before him. Words of fire etched themselves into the rock, a message for the giants, a final pronouncement of their fate, words of both judgment and truth. He handed these tablets to Mahaway. Return to your brethren, Enoch instructed. Bring them these words. They cannot change what is coming, but perhaps in understanding, they may find something like peace. As Mahaway prepared to depart, Enoch offered one final insight. The flood comes not from hatred, but from love, love for creation itself, which must be cleansed to survive. Remember this when the waters rise. With these words echoing in his mind, Mahaway departed paradise, the tablets heavy in his hands, the burden of knowledge heavier still in his heart. The War of the Giants. The return of Mahaway with Enoch's tablets marked the beginning of the end for the giants. As he read the words of judgment to his assembled brethren, the reaction was not uniform acceptance, but violent division. The Book of Giants describes how the once united children of the Watchers fractured into factions, each responding differently to the knowledge of their impending doom. Some giants, led by Ohia, called for repentance. Though the tablets offered no path to salvation, this group believed that facing their end with dignity might grant them some mercy in whatever lay beyond death. They ceased their predation of humans, withdrew to isolated places, and spent their final days in solemn contemplation. Others, with Gilgamesh among their leaders, refused to accept fate passively. They proposed a desperate plan to build a wall so high it would rise above the coming floodwaters. The fragments describe their efforts to pile mountain upon mountain, uprooting entire forests for lumber, commanding their human slaves to work until they dropped dead from exhaustion. But the largest faction, led by the fierce Haya, chose a different path, one of defiance through violence. If we are to die, Haya declared, we will leave nothing behind for whoever comes after. This group embarked on a campaign of destruction unmatched even by their previous atrocities. They poisoned wells, burned fields, slaughtered not just humans, but every living thing they encountered. What began as philosophical disagreement soon escalated to physical conflict. Giants who had once fought side by side now turned their superhuman strength against each other. The texts describe battles that reshaped valleys into plains, that dried up rivers with blood, that toppled mountains with the force of their blows. One particularly vivid passage tells of Ohia confronting Haya, brother against brother. Would you make our final days a testament to our monstrosity? Ohia asked. We were born of heaven and earth. Can we not die with both dignity and regret? Haya's response came not in words, but in violence. The battle between these siblings lasted 7 days and nights. each blow powerful enough to split the earth. Their combat created a canyon that filled with water, forming a lake that would later be named for their blood. While the giants warred amongst themselves, the few humans who had remained free from their influence watched from hiding. The text includes a poignant scene where an old woman, witnessing the conflict from a mountain cave, explains to her grandchildren, "Even monsters fear death. Even the mighty tremble before judgment." The war expanded beyond physical combat. Giants who had inherited magical knowledge from their fathers now unleashed these powers against their kin. Spells that controlled weather were turned into weapons. Rituals meant to call spirits now summoned destructive forces. The very arts that had corrupted humanity became tools in the giants' internecine conflict. In the midst of this chaos, a smaller group formed around Mahaway. These giants, moved by their emissary's description of Enoch's compassion, sought a middle path. They neither indulged in final destruction nor pretended they could escape judgment. Instead, they gathered the knowledge their fathers had brought from heaven and worked to preserve it, believing that something of their existence should survive even if they did not. The war among the giants weakened them all. Beings who might have presented a united front against the coming flood instead exhausted themselves in conflict. The text suggests this internal strife was itself part of the divine plan, that the giants, had they remained united, might have found some way to survive, or at least to cause even greater harm before the end. As the days passed and signs of the coming deluge multiplied, the fighting gradually subsided. Exhaustion replaced rage. The giants looked upon what they had done to each other and found too late a sense of kinship in their shared fate. Former enemies sat together on mountaintops, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. Former allies parted ways, each seeking their own place to face the end. In the final days before the flood, the war had reduced their numbers substantially. Many lay dead in valleys and plains, their enormous bodies becoming part of the landscape. Others were wounded beyond recovery, waiting for the waters to claim them. The survivors, depleted and divided, no longer posed the threat to creation they once had. And so, without realizing it, the giants had participated in their own destruction. Their war had accomplished what their father's rebellion could not. It had brought them to the threshold of humility. As the first raindrops began to fall, the surviving giants looked up at the darkening sky with something new in their eyes. Not just fear, but understanding. Hybrid mythologies. The Book of Giants stands at a remarkable crossroads of ancient storytelling. Its pages weave together threads from Jewish tradition, Mesopotamian legend, and later Manichaean belief, creating a tapestry where familiar figures appear in unfamiliar contexts. Perhaps most striking is the presence of Gilgamesh, the legendary Sumerian king, reimagined as one of the mighty Nephilim. The ancient storytellers who composed these texts lived in a world where boundaries between cultural traditions were more fluid than we might imagine. They borrowed freely from neighboring mythologies, finding echoes of their own beliefs in foreign tales. In their minds, these weren't separate stories, but different glimpses of the same hidden truth. Gilgamesh enters the narrative not as the hero seeking immortality from older poems, but as a giant facing inevitable destruction. His previous quests for eternal life take on new meaning when placed against the backdrop of the coming flood. The Mesopotamian flood hero Utnapishtim, who in the original epic grants Gilgamesh wisdom about mortality, is replaced by Enoch, who delivers not wisdom for survival, but confirmation of doom. This blending of traditions reveals something profound about ancient understanding. These writers didn't see themselves as creating fiction, but as uncovering history. If their neighbors told tales of mighty beings before a great flood, surely these must be the same giants mentioned in their own sacred texts. The differences were merely matters of perspective, names changed in translation, details lost or added through generations of oral telling. Hebrew terms like Nephilim and Watcher appear alongside Mesopotamian names. Enoch walks in the same narrative landscape as Gilgamesh. The heavenly realm of Jewish angelology mingles with the cosmic geography of Sumerian myth. Even the flood itself carries echoes of multiple traditions. The biblical deluge sent by Yahweh, the Mesopotamian flood ordered by Enlil, like the cleansing waters found in myths around the world. The fragments describe how giants bore names known across many lands, what one culture called Humbaba, another might know as Hahya. The monster slain in one hero's tale might be the ancestor venerated in another's lineage. These hybrid identities suggest ancient awareness that different peoples were telling the same stories through different cultural lenses. This mythological blending tells us something about the world that produced these texts. It was a place of cultural exchange, where travelers carried stories across borders, where conquered peoples adopted their conquerors' gods while maintaining their own, where traders exchanged not just goods but ideas in bustling marketplaces and caravanserais. The presence of Gilgamesh among the biblical giants might seem surprising to modern readers who place these traditions in separate categories, but ancient audiences would have found it natural. Their world was full of connections we've since forgotten, patterns recognized across cultural boundaries. They lived closer to these stories, hearing them not as foreign myths, but as echoes of their own ancestral memories. Later, when the Book of Giants was adopted into Manichaean texts, another layer of meaning was added. Mani, the prophet of this dualistic faith, incorporated these giants into his cosmic vision of light versus darkness. The Nephilim became symbolic of the mixture of spiritual light trapped in material darkness, beings with divine elements corrupted by their physical nature. In the Manichaean version, the giants' destruction by water represented not just divine judgment, but the ongoing cosmic struggle between opposing forces. Their spiritual essence, released from corrupted bodies, continued to play a role in the universal drama. Here, the Book of Giants transcended its origins to become part of a new religious framework spanning continents. This layering of mythologies reminds us that ancient texts rarely exist in isolation. They grow from shared soil, branches of older stories reaching new audiences. The Book of Giants preserves not just one tradition, but a conversation between cultures, a recognition that different peoples might be remembering the same primordial events. The hybrid nature of these stories doesn't diminish their power. Instead, it suggests their resonance across human experience. When multiple cultures preserve tales of mighty beings destroyed by flood, we glimpse not just shared literary motifs, but perhaps shared memory, a distant echo of events that left their mark on collective consciousness. As we explore these fragments, we're invited to read with ancient eyes, to see connections rather than contradictions, to appreciate how storytellers once wove diverse threads into coherent tapestries. The presence of Gilgamesh among biblical giants isn't confusion, but synthesis, a recognition that truth might be found at the intersection of traditions rather than within their boundaries. Tablets from heaven. The stone tablets Mahaway carried back from Enoch represented more than just a message. They embodied the concept of divine communication made tangible. Throughout ancient traditions, heavenly wisdom came inscribed in stone, preserved for generations in a form that neither fire nor flood could easily destroy. These tablets from the Book of Giants echo other sacred stones in religious history, from Moses receiving the 10 Commandments to the golden plates of Mormon tradition. When Mahaway placed these tablets before his fellow giants, the fragments tell us they initially refused to look upon them. The stones radiated an energy that burned their eyes, a light not of this world. Only after 3 days of fasting and preparation did they find the courage to face what was written. The words themselves were described as burning like fire, yet cold as ice. Truth so pure it caused physical pain to beings whose existence violated cosmic law. What exactly did these tablets contain? The surviving fragments offered glimpses rather than complete text. They spoke of time measurements beyond human understanding, cycles of stars and ages of the earth. They detailed the crimes of the Watchers, cataloged with terrible precision. They named each giant and described their fate with such clarity that some who heard their names read aloud fell to the ground as if already drowning. Most significantly, the tablets contained a history of the world that differed from what the giants knew. They learned they were not the first powerful beings to face divine judgment, nor would they be the last. They discovered cycles of creation and destruction stretching back before human memory. They saw themselves not as mighty rulers, but as a cosmic mistake soon to be corrected. The tablets also described what would come after, a renewed world where waters would recede, where Noah's family would multiply across cleansed lands, where new nations would rise without the shadow of giants looming over them. This vision of a future without them struck deeper than any physical threat. To know you will be forgotten is perhaps the truest death. As the giants studied these tablets, strange phenomena occurred around them. The fragments describe how soil turned to dust beneath the stones, how water refused to touch them, how animals fled from their presence. The tablets existed partially outside natural law, objects from another realm temporarily visiting this one. Most poignantly, the tablets contained messages from the Watchers to their children. These fallen angels, already imprisoned in darkness, had been permitted to send final words to their doomed offspring. Some begged forgiveness for the inheritance of judgment they had passed down. Others offered what small comfort they could, speaking of existence beyond physical form. A few maintained their defiance, encouraging their children to rage against the end. The concept of tablets as divine communication tools appears across cultures for good reason. Unlike oral messages that change with each telling, stone preserves exactly what was inscribed. Unlike prophecies that might be misinterpreted, written judgments leave little room for negotiation. The tablets brought by Mahaway represented an unalterable verdict, heaven's final word on the matter of the giants. In some fragments, there are hints that the giants attempted to create their own competing tablets, carving alternate histories and futures into stone. These human-made counterfeits crumbled to dust almost immediately, unable to bear the weight of falsehood presented as eternal truth. The contrast underscored the authenticity of Enoch's tablets, which remained intact despite the giants' attempts to destroy them. The fate of these tablets after the flood remains a mystery touched on in later traditions. Some suggest they were taken back to heaven before the waters came. Others claim they were buried in a mountain that would remain above the floodwaters, preserved for future ages. Still others believe they were transformed into constellations, their message written in stars for those with eyes to see. What's clear from the fragments is that these tablets represented a turning point for the giants. After receiving them, denial became impossible. The luxury of disbelief was stripped away, leaving only the naked truth of their situation. Some responded with deeper violence, others with acceptance, but none could return to their former state of ignorant power. In this way, the tablets mirror the function of divine revelation throughout religious history. They bring knowledge that transforms the recipient, demanding response rather than passive reception. The giants who read them became the last of their kind to know their true place in the cosmic order before waters erased their physical presence from the earth. Angels in rebellion. The giants' terrible drama unfolded on earth, but its origins lay in heaven. The Book of Giants offers tantalizing glimpses into the rebellion that started everything, the descent of the Watchers. These weren't merely angels, but a specific class of celestial beings charged with observing humanity without interference. Their fall from grace represented not just disobedience, but a fundamental betrayal of their cosmic purpose. The fragments name specific Watchers and detail their transgressions with surprising specificity. Shemahaza, their leader, first proposed the descent to earth, swearing his companions to a terrible oath that bound them to their course. Azazel taught humans to make weapons of war and ornaments of vanity. Barakel revealed astrology, while Kokobel showed the meanings of celestial signs. Armaros taught spell-breaking, Shamsiel the signs of the sun, and Sariel the courses of the moon. Each angelic being specialized in knowledge that humans were not meant to possess, at least not yet, not in this way, not without the wisdom to use it properly. Their teachings represented not enlightenment, but premature revelation, cosmic secrets unveiled before humanity had developed the moral foundation to handle them responsibly. The text describes their rebellion not as a single moment, but as a gradual seduction. Initially, the Watchers simply observed humans more closely than their mandate allowed. They found themselves drawn to human women whose beauty awakened desires foreign to celestial beings. They began to materialize physical forms, at first just to walk among humans undetected, later to experience physical sensations previously unknown to them. What makes this story particularly poignant is that the Watchers' fall came not from hatred of heaven, but from fascination with Earth. They didn't reject divine light, but became entranced by a different kind of beauty. Their sin wasn't primarily pride, but inappropriate love, desire directed toward beings they should have protected rather than possessed. In some fragments, we glimpse the moment of decision when the Watchers removed their heavenly garments, described as robes of light, and donned bodies of flesh. The text suggests this transformation was painful, a compression of celestial nature into material form. Yet they found the discomfort worth enduring for the novel sensations that awaited them on Earth. Once embodied, the Watchers discovered emotions previously unknown: jealousy, competitive desire, the need to impress, the fear of rejection. These new feelings confused beings accustomed to the clarity of heavenly purpose. They began competing among themselves for human attention, each attempting to offer more impressive knowledge, more attractive appearances, more compelling displays of power. The Book of Giants portrays their rebellion as tragic rather than simply evil. These were beings who had stood in divine presence, who had witnessed creation unfold, who had been entrusted with watching over humanity's development. Their fall represented not just personal failure, but cosmic tragedy, guardians becoming predators, shepherds becoming wolves. As the Watchers established themselves on Earth, they organized into something like a kingdom. The fragments describe their mountain stronghold, a place where heaven and earth seemed to meet, where humans came seeking knowledge and where the Watchers' children were born. This realm existed as a corrupt mirror of divine order, with Shemihaza as its dark ruler. The text speaks of assemblies where the fallen angels gathered to share discoveries about material existence, to compare their human wives, to boast about their offspring. These meetings mimicked the heavenly councils they had once attended, but with purpose twisted toward earthly power rather than divine harmony. Most poignantly, the fragments suggest moments of doubt among the Watchers. Some began to question their choice as they witnessed the consequences unfolding. They saw their giant children consuming resources at unsustainable rates, terrorizing humans, warping the natural order. They recognized too late that knowledge shared without wisdom leads not to elevation, but to corruption. By the time the Watchers realized their error, it was too late to reverse course. Their children roamed the earth, implementing twisted versions of heavenly knowledge. The humans they had sought to impress now fled from them in terror. The world they had found so fascinating was being destroyed by their intervention. The Book of Giants describes how heaven's patience finally ended. The archangels Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel were dispatched to deal with the crisis. Their appearance on earth marked the beginning of judgment, not just for the giants, but for their rebellious fathers as well. In a scene of cosmic significance, the Watchers were bound in chains of darkness, confined to a realm between worlds until final judgment. They could see the earth but no longer touch it. They could watch the consequences of their actions unfold but do nothing to intervene. Most cruelly, they could witness the approaching doom of their children without offering any help. This imprisonment represented the ultimate irony for beings whose very name, Watchers, defined their original purpose. They were now forced to watch as their rebellion's consequences played out to their tragic conclusion. From their prison, they sent dreams to their giant offspring, trying to warn them of coming judgment. But just as humans had misused the Watchers' knowledge, the giants misinterpreted their father's dream warnings until Mahawe's journey brought clarity too late for salvation. Forbidden knowledge. At the heart of the Book of Giants lies a profound meditation on knowledge, its power, its dangers, and the question of what humans were meant to know. The text catalogs with remarkable detail the arts and sciences the Watchers revealed to humanity before the flood. These weren't simple skills, but transformative technologies that fundamentally altered the human relationship with the natural world. The fragments describe how Azazel taught humans to mine metals from the earth's depths, to forge weapons of war, and to craft jewelry that inspired vanity. Before his teaching, humans had lived with what the land provided. After, they began to extract resources with increasing hunger, to adorn themselves with earth's treasures, that to harm one another with increasingly sophisticated tools of violence. Shemihaza revealed the properties of roots and plants, not just for healing, but for changing consciousness, for inducing visions, for connecting with realms beyond ordinary perception. Knowledge meant to bring communion with nature, instead created dependency and escape from reality. The fragments tell how Barakel unveiled the movements of stars, teaching humans to read meaning in celestial patterns. This astronomy quickly became astrology, not just mapping the heavens, but believing they controlled human destiny. People who had once seen stars as beautiful lights now viewed them as controlling forces, shifting responsibility for their actions to distant celestial bodies. Kokobel showed humans how to interpret omens in natural phenomena, bird flights, animal behaviors, weather patterns. What began as practical weather prediction evolved into superstition. People who had lived in harmony with nature's rhythms now feared them, seeing threats and warnings in every natural occurrence. Armoros taught spell-breaking, but in doing so revealed the concept of spells themselves. Protective knowledge became aggressive magic. Humans learned to curse as well as bless, to bind as well as release. The fragments describe communities torn apart by accusations of malevolent sorcery, by fear of invisible attacks, by constant spiritual warfare. Most dangerous was the knowledge of writing itself. The Watchers taught humans to record and preserve information across generations. This gift, perhaps more than any other, transformed human experience. No longer dependent on memory and oral tradition, knowledge could accumulate beyond what any single mind could hold. Wisdom that might have been earned through direct experience could now be acquired through study, but without the temperance that experience brings. What makes the Book of Giants so thought-provoking is its suggestion that civilization itself, with its technologies, arts, and sciences, began as a kind of cosmic transgression. The knowledge humans weren't meant to possess, yet wasn't evil in itself, but premature, like giving a child a power tool before they understand its dangers. The Watchers granted capabilities without the wisdom to use them properly. The fragments contain a particularly moving passage where an unnamed Watcher reflects on what he has done. We've given them fire before they learned not to burn themselves. We have given them metal before they learned not to forge chains. We have given them stars before they learned not to wander from their path. This perspective invites us to consider whether knowledge without moral development leads inevitably to destruction. The antediluvian world portrayed in these texts achieved technological sophistication, but moral bankruptcy. They could build great cities, but not maintain justice within them. They could predict celestial events, but not control their own worst impulses. The Watchers' knowledge accelerated human development, but short-circuited human wisdom. It created power without restraint, capability without conscience. The flood came not just to punish evil, but to reset this imbalance, to give humanity a fresh start where moral and spiritual growth might precede technological advancement. In some fragments, Noah is portrayed as preserving not just animal species, but selected knowledge as well. The text suggests he was guided to save what humans were ready for while letting the most dangerous secrets be washed away. This curated preservation allowed post-flood civilization to develop in a more balanced way, with technological advancement paced to moral capacity. The Book of Giants thus presents a nuanced view of knowledge itself, neither inherently good nor evil, but powerful, requiring proper context and maturity. This theme resonates through later religious traditions, from the Tree of Knowledge in Eden to Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. It reflects a universal human anxiety about whether our capabilities have outpaced our wisdom. Perhaps most striking is the text's suggestion that certain knowledge was always meant for humans eventually, just not all at once, not without preparation, not without divine guidance. The Watchers' sin wasn't sharing divine secrets, but short-circuiting humanity's developmental timeline, creating power without corresponding responsibility. In this light, the flood appears not just as punishment, but as protection, a cosmic reset allowing humanity to redevelop at a more sustainable pace. The giants, products of premature knowledge and inappropriate union, represented what happens when natural boundaries are crossed too quickly. Their destruction cleared the way for human development to proceed along its intended path. Women of Earth, often overlooked in discussions of the Book of Giants, are the human women who bore the Nephilim. These unnamed mothers stand at the intersection of human and divine, their bodies the vessels through which cosmic boundaries were breached. The fragments offer tantalizingly brief glimpses of these women, yet their presence raises profound questions about consent, desire, and the female experience of this supernatural drama. The texts describe how the Watchers first noticed human women while observing from their heavenly posts. They were struck by their beauty, a concept perhaps different from heavenly splendor, earthy, vital, and mysteriously attractive to beings who had only celestial perfection. What began as fascination grew into desire, and desire eventually overcame their divine mandate. The fragments speak of women chosen by the Watchers, selected for their beauty, their strength, or some quality visible only to angelic eyes. Some traditions suggest these women were flattered by celestial attention, willingly accepting these powerful beings as partners. Others hint at coercion, at beings of overwhelming power taking what they desired from humans unable to refuse. The truth likely includes both narratives, some women elevated by their choice, others victimized by it. What must it have been like to bear a child of mixed heritage? The texts describe pregnancies of unusual length and difficulty, with mothers growing increasingly weak as their unborn children drew supernatural strength from their bodies. Many died in childbirth, their frames unable to deliver beings already larger than human infants. Those who survived faced the task of raising children who quickly outgrew any possibility of maternal control. A particularly moving fragment describes a woman who watches her giant son from hiding, unable to approach him as he tears trees from the ground and devours entire herds of cattle. "My body made this," she whispers to herself, yet I no longer recognize anything of myself within him. This poignant alienation, to create life that becomes unrecognizable, captures the tragedy of these mothers. Some women formed communities around their shared experience. The fragments mention mountaintop gatherings where mothers of giants exchanged knowledge, supported one another through difficult births, and pooled resources to feed their ever-hungry children. These women developed herbalism and midwifery beyond what other humans knew, necessity driving innovation as they coped with their unusual maternal burdens. Not all the women remained loyal to their celestial partners. Some fled when they realized what they had invited into their lives. Others formed protective circles around purely human communities, using their knowledge of the Watchers' weaknesses to establish safe havens. A few became intermediaries between the giants and terrified human populations, negotiating terms that might spare villages from destruction. The Book of Giants suggests some women gained unusual longevity through their association with the Watchers, living to see multiple generations of normal humans pass, while their giant offspring still roamed the earth as young adults. This extended lifespan became both blessing and curse, more time to live, but more time to witness the growing corruption of the world their children helped create. Perhaps most heart-wrenching are fragments describing mothers who recognized the monstrosity of their offspring, yet couldn't abandon maternal love. They brought offerings to giants who barely acknowledged them, tended wounds of beings who caused countless wounds themselves, sang lullabies to creatures who had long since forgotten tenderness. Their love remained even when reciprocation failed, a thoroughly human constancy directed toward increasingly inhuman children. As signs of the coming flood multiplied, these women faced impossible choices. Some tried to warn their giant children, only to be ignored or mocked. Others attempted to build refuges, knowing such efforts were futile against divine judgment. A few, the text hints, chose to accept the coming waters, wary of living in a world corrupted beyond recognition, yet mourning the children they would lose. In rare fragments, we glimpse women who came to regret their unions with the Watchers, who saw the consequences unfold and wished they had chosen differently. One passage describes a mother climbing a mountain to address the heavens directly. "I did not know what I invited into my body, into our world. The beauty that drew me concealed a terror I could not imagine. If judgment must come, let it come, but know that some of us understand our error and would undo it if we could." This perspective, remorse mingled with acceptance, offers a profoundly human response to cosmic events beyond human control. These women, participants in a drama not of their making, faced its consequences with clarity many of their celestial partners lacked. They witnessed the corruption of creation firsthand, raising its agents while sometimes recognizing the necessity of its cleansing. The women of Earth, too often reduced to nameless victims or footnotes in the narrative, actually represent its most complex moral perspective. Neither fully guilty like the Watchers nor fully innocent like uninvolved humans, they occupied the space between loving what they should perhaps fear, nurturing what would ultimately destroy, carrying within their bodies the literal union of heaven and earth gone wrong. Their absence from much of the text speaks to ancient patriarchal perspectives, but the fragments that do preserve their voices reveal dimensions of the story otherwise lost. Through them, we glimpse not just the physical reality of bearing giants, but the emotional complexity of loving children who become monsters, of witnessing cosmic mistakes you helped create, of standing at the boundary between human limitation and divine transgression. In the end, most shared the fate of their giant children, claimed by the same waters that washed away all traces of the world before the flood. Yet their experience, recorded in these fragments that survived millennia, offers a window into perhaps the most human aspect of this supernatural tale, the capacity to love even what might destroy us, and the wisdom to recognize when that love is not enough to prevent necessary endings. Corruption of creation. Beyond the giants' violence against humans, the Book of Giants describes a deeper transgression, the systematic corruption of the natural world itself. As children of beings who had witnessed creation, the giants possessed instinctive knowledge of life's patterns and boundaries. What they lacked was respect for these boundaries, leading to experiments that violated the established order of living things. The fragments describe how giants captured animals of different species and forced them to breed, creating hybrid creatures never meant to exist. These chimeric beings possess traits of multiple animals, the strength of one, the senses of another, the temperament of a third. Some could not survive their own unnatural composition, suffering brief lives of pain. Others thrived in monstrous ways, becoming predators more fierce than anything natural selection had produced. Not content with animal hybridization, some giants began experimenting with plant life. They grafted toxic species onto nourishing ones, creating fruits that appeared wholesome but poisoned those who ate them. They bred plants that grew with unnatural speed, whose roots cracked foundations and whose vines strangled native species. Through these botanical experiments, they created agricultural chaos that threatened food supplies for normal humans. Most disturbing were attempts to blend human and animal essence. The texts hint at rituals where giants combined blood and tissue from different species, creating beings that defied categorization, not fully human, not fully animal, existing in a boundary space with no place in natural order. These experiments produced suffering for all involved, yet the giants continued them out of curiosity and the desire to demonstrate their power over creation. The fragments suggest these violations were not random, but systematic, attempts to reverse engineer creation itself, to understand its principles through disruption rather than observation. The giants, perhaps seeking to recapture the creative power their angelic fathers had witnessed, instead produced only distortion and suffering. Their experiments revealed not wisdom, but its absence, knowledge without understanding, power without responsibility. As these unnatural creations multiplied, they disrupted ecosystems already strained by the giants' enormous appetites. Species that had existed in balance for thousands of years suddenly faced competitors with advantages no natural evolution could have produced. Food webs collapsed, predator-prey relationships destabilized. The carefully orchestrated harmony of nature began to fracture under pressures it was never designed to withstand. One fragment describes forests where no bird songs could be heard, where unnatural predators had eliminated all normal wildlife. Another speaks of rivers running foul with the waste of giant-bred creatures whose digestive systems produced toxins no natural waterway could process. The text portrays a world increasingly alienated from its original design, where corruption spread like contagion from the giants' laboratories and breeding pits. Beyond physical manipulation, the giants corrupted creation through spiritual pollution. The texts speak of rituals where they sacrificed animals in ways that released negative energies, where they spoke words that altered the subtle vibrations of places once sacred. Mountains where they dwelled became devoid of certain plants that would not grow in their presence. Springs near their habitations ran bitter or dried up entirely. This systematic corruption reached its peak in what the fragments call the mixing of all boundaries. Giants began wearing garments made from impossible combinations. The fur of predator and prey stitched together, the feathers of birds that would never naturally flock together. They built dwellings of materials that opposed each other, forcing stone and wood and metal to coexist in ways that created subtle disharmonies. They ate food combinations that violated natural categories, mixing carnivore and herbivore diets indiscriminately. These actions might seem trivial compared to their violence against humans, but the Book of Giants presents them as equally significant transgressions. By corrupting the patterns established at creation, the giants were effectively declaring war not just on humans, but on the cosmic order itself. Their hybridization experiments represented not just scientific curiosity, but rebellion against established boundaries, a continuation of their fathers' original sin of crossing the heaven-earth divide. What made these violations particularly tragic was that they stemmed from a distorted version of divine creative power. The giants, inheriting fragments of their father's celestial knowledge, possessed genuine insight into how living things worked. But without the wisdom to guide this knowledge, without respect for the purpose behind natural boundaries, their creative acts produced only corruption. As judgment approached, the text describes how even the earth itself began to reject the giants and their creations. Soil became barren beneath their feet. Water turned stagnant at their touch. The very elements rebelled against beings who had so thoroughly violated their natural functions. This physical rejection mirrored the cosmic rejection that would soon manifest as floodwaters rising to cleanse the corrupted world. The Book of Giants thus presents an ecological dimension to divine judgment. The flood came not just to punish moral evil, but to reset natural balances, to cleanse creation of hybrid corruptions, to restore boundaries the giants had systematically violated. It represented not just divine anger, but divine healing, painful but necessary surgery to remove corruption that threatened the entire living system. In this light, Noah's Ark takes on added significance. It preserved not just animal species, but proper categories, clean and unclean, male and female, according to their kinds. The careful cataloging and separation maintained natural boundaries the giants had tried to erase. Noah's role was not just preservation, but purification, ensuring that post-flood creation would unfold according to its original design, free from the distortions introduced by the giants' experiments. This aspect of the narrative speaks with surprising relevance to modern concerns about genetic modification, species extinction, and ecological disruption. The ancient text raises questions about boundaries that still resonate. Just because we can combine and alter living things, should we? Where lies the line between stewardship and violation? How do we balance exploration of possibility with respect for established patterns? The Book of Giants suggests these questions are not merely practical but spiritual, that our relationship with the natural world reflects our relationship with its creator. The giants' corruption of nature stemmed directly from their rejection of divine boundaries. Their drive to remake creation in their image, rather than preserve its integrity, parallels many modern approaches to the natural world. As the fragments describe the final days before the flood, they portray a world so thoroughly corrupted that renewal required cleansing rather than reform. The hybrid creatures, the polluted landscapes, the disrupted ecosystems had passed a point of no return. Creation itself, the text suggests, cried out for the waters that would both destroy and purify, ending the giants' experiments while creating space for life to begin again according to its original design. The call to heaven. The world had grown dark with the shadows of giants. Ordinary folk lived in fear as these mighty beings crushed everything in their path. Homes were torn apart, fields trampled, and lives taken on whims. Each night, the cries of suffering people rose up like smoke from a fire. These weren't just any tears. They were prayers wrapped in desperation, pleas that climbed higher than mountain peaks. The sobs of mothers who'd lost children, the whispers of farmers whose lands lay ruined, and the quiet mourning of elders who remembered better days all blended into one sorrowful song.